Everyone say hello recording. Hello recording. Yes, hello. So today we start, turn over a new leaf because we are leaving our other projects behind. You already did your UNODC video. You already did your comic about state building. We had no partial exam, and we already know everything there is to know about the French Revolution, the American Revolution, American Civil War, state building, liberalism, etc. Industrialization, capitalism, it's all there, right? We already talked about all this. Now we are going to talk about Mexico. Yes, now the thing is we're gonna do a crazy thing this semester, and that was part of the plan. It's not because of the earthquake, that's how it works at PIC. We are gonna talk about the entire 19th century in Mexico in 1 week. Yeah, I know, right? So the first question, right now, it's more, this part of this section about Mexico in our class is not really about reviewing what we know from memory from primaria and secundaria, right? We all know about la fundación de Tenochtitlan, el águila en el nopal, el Tlatuani con los guerreros águila y leopardo. We know about la conquista, we know about el grito de Dolores, etc. We're not going to go through events, but we're going to question the application of certain concepts to Mexican state building. So we start with a question. When was Mexico invented?
1821.
Independence, consummation of the independence, okay, 1821. So if we traveled in time to September 22, 1821, the day after the independence of Mexico was consummated, and we asked around, hey guys, are we Mexicans? Would they say yes? So when was Mexico invented? Because we're Mexican, we should know this, right? I mean, we know when the United States was invented, we know when France was invented. Any other ideas? Because 1821, good suggestion.
Well, what? Maybe when the Constitution was made.
When the current Constitution was made?
No, the first one.
So 1824?
23, no?
No, 24. Well, there was a constitution before 1824, La Constitución de Apatzingán, but that was not accepted by all the states. The first constitution that was accepted by all the states is 1824. And it was quite a conservative constitution. It said we had a mandatory religion in Mexico, Catholicism. It said noble titles were acceptable in Mexico, right? It allowed for local taxes, alcabalas, right? Local taxes. Is that if we looked at the Constitution of 1824, let's see. One second, un segundo. Where is it? Here we go. So another thing that was weird about the Constitution of 1824 was that it said Mexico had a very specific territory, which included states like Sonora y Sinaloa, one state, Coahuila y Texas, another one single state. Okay. So Sonora, I'm trying to draw here. So Sonora y Sinaloa, Coahuila y Texas. Mexico State has a coast. We have a whole state missing here, which is, which one? Where is Acapulco?
Guerrero.
No Guerrero there. Chiapas is missing the entire southern part. If we went to school, if you arrived at my class and I say, let's talk about Mexico. I show you this map and I'm like, this is Mexico. Would you be like, yep, there it is, our country?
No.
No? Alex, are you knitting?
No,
Oh, okay.
because no.
No, it's because my pen has stuck something.
So we know, oh, 1 second. So we know their 1824 first constitution, maybe, but it's also not entirely accurate. Any other ideas? For example, would you say the Aztecs were Mexican?
Well, they were Mexicas, no?
So when we talk about Aztecs, they are completely foreign, not anything to do with us. They are a different nation, different community.
No, they are our background.
So they are Mexican, yes or no?
No, well, the territory was not named.
Not asking about the
Mexican back then,
territory.
so I would say no.
No,
So would you say that the foundation of Tenochtitlan has nothing to do with our nation, nothing to do with Mexico as it is?
Yes, it has to do, but they are not Mexican.
Yeah, so it has something to do, but it's not, and it may be.
No, it has something to do because it affects us.
The
It affects us.
culture changed a lot.
What did you say, Vanessa?
That the culture varies a lot between
Uh-huh.
them and
Now,
Mexicans nowadays.
another thing to consider is remember the 4 characteristics of a country that I talk about in my video about communities, nations, and states. 4 characteristics of a country. That a country needs 4 things
Yes,
to
it
exist.
has
Territory,
Territory,
territory, government,
government,
a government,
Our background,
uh,
our history.
not necessarily history. What?
From other countries.
Diplomatic recognition from other countries, and a very important one,
Stable population.
a stable population, right? So we've talked about, we know Mexico has had a stable population, some type of government, and a territory for a while. But when did it get diplomatic recognition from other countries as Mexico? Any idea? Because remember, Santiago mentioned Mexico had an independence. Correct. But when you have an independence, who do you need to recognize that independence? It's one specific country you need to that recognizes you.
That conquered you?
The one that you're declaring independence from, right?
It was.
So when did Spain
I don't remember.
say like, okay, fine, Mexico exists?
I don't remember the date, but it was in
I think it was in 1830
Yes,
something.
1833, correct. Right? Because Mexico needed the recognition of Spain and the Vatican because it was a Catholic monarchy, right? And did not get that recognition until 12 years after the consummation of the independence. Now, would we say that Mexico started existing right there? Or did it already exist?
It already exists.
Now, another thing to consider here is, have you ever read the Declaration of Independence of Mexico? Because we know all about the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen in France. We know all about the Declaration of Independence of the United States, right? What about the Declaration of Independence of Mexico? Wouldn't that be super relevant to our lives? Maybe. I don't know. Okay, so let's read it. Yay. Yeah, thank you, teacher. Let's see. Fernanda, can you help us read the first part, please?
Acta de Independencia del Imperio Mexicano pronunciada por su Junta Soberana, congregada en la capital en 28 de septiembre de 1821.
Okay, stop there. So, it doesn't say Mexico, it says Imperio Mexicano. So that's a little weird for us, right? Now, what is the Junta Soberana? Is that like a Congress where people elected to be there? Because remember, in the United States, the Continental Congress had representatives from each state, but the Junta Soberana, does it sound elected?
No.
No. Who can we assume that those people were?
Peninsulares.
What?
Peninsular.
So we know they were not indigenous. Now, a good hint here is, what are the first three signatures underneath? So Agustín de Iturbide, a criollo general who basically won with the Ejército Trigarante. What's the next one?
Antonio Obispo de la Puebla.
A bishop from Puebla, and
De Virrey.
and the Spanish viceroy. So, in the Declaration of Independence of the United States, was King George like, sure, independence, yay?
No.
No. In the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, was Louis XVI like, yep, rights of man and citizen, I agree, completely agree? Not at all, right? So, we have a very different type of movement here, a very different type of declaration. Now, Eduardo, can you read the next part, please? La Nación Mexicana.
La nación mexicana, que por 300 años ni ha tenido voluntad propia, ni libre el uso de la voz, sale hoy de la opresión en que ha vivido. ¿I continue? Los heroicos esfuerzos de sus hijos han sido coronados y está consumada la empresa, enteramente memorable, que un genio superior a toda admiración y elogio, amor y gloria de su patria, principio en Iguala prosiguió y llevó a cabo arrollando obstáculos casi insuperables.
Okay, let's make a pause there. So, does this declaration talk about anything regarding citizenship? Does it say Mexicans have an individual perspective? Mexicans are citizens of a country. No, it talks about sons of a country, right? Also, does it mention anything related to equality? Yes or no?
No.
So it mentions patria, but so fatherland, which is a liberal concept, but in a very specific context, right? It's talking about Agustín de Iturbide, and it's describing Agustín de Iturbide as un genio, superior a toda admiración y elogio, amor y gloria de su patria, principió en Iguala y prosiguió y llevó a cabo arrollando obstáculos casi insuperables. So Agustín de Iturbide, is he equal to other Mexicans?
Is he what?
Equal to other Mexicans?
He is, but he doesn't consider
No, he
himself.
wasn't.
No, I mean in the context of this declaration, is it saying all Mexicans are equal, including Agustín de Iturbide?
No, it's not.
No, it's Agustín de Iturbide making a document where he's saying, I'm the king of everything, please respect me. Now, did Thomas Jefferson do this in the Declaration of Independence of the United States? Was he like, I'm a genius, I am superior to all admiration, I love my patria more than anyone else?
No.
No, right? No equality. Now, can someone else read the next part? Leonardo? Is he here? Okay, someone else. Alejandra, can you read it, please?
Restituida, pues, esta parte del septentrión al ejercicio de cuantos derechos le concedió el autor de la naturaleza y reconocen por innegables y sagrados las naciones cultas de la tierra, en libertad de constituirse del modo que más convenga a su felicidad y con representantes que puedan manifestar su voluntad y sus designios, comienza a hacer uso de tan preciosos dones y declara solemnemente, por medio de la Junta Suprema del Imperio, que es nación soberana e independiente de la antigua España, con quien en lo sucesivo no mantendrá otra unión que la de una amistad estrecha, en los términos que prescribieren los tratados, que entablará relaciones amistosas con las demás potencias, ejecutando respecto de ellas cuantos actos pueden y están en posesión de ejecutar las otras naciones soberanas, que va a constituirse con arreglo a las bases que en el Plan de Iguala y Tratado de Córdoba estableció sabiamente el primer jefe del ejército imperial de las tres garantías y en fin que sostendrá a todo trance y con sacrificio de los saberes y vidas de sus individuos, si fuera necesario. Esta solemne declaración, hecha en la capital del imperio a 28 de septiembre del año de 1821, primero la independencia de México.
Very good. Now, do we see anything liberal whatsoever in this paragraph? Anything? Do we see anything conservative? What is conservative here? Maybe, for example, when it talks about el autor de la naturaleza, right? It's not saying we the people. It's saying God gave us this country, right? Yeah?
Like, because God gave us this place, well, this territory, then we can do the things that are the best for us.
Yeah, God gave us this country and God gave us these rights. Does the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen say God gave us rights? No, right? It says rights exist because we are all equal and we have them because we're people. No mention of God, right? And in the United States, who's making the country? Is it God?
The people.
No, it's the people, right? Here in Mexico, though, it's God, specifically God. Now, another thing here is, think about how in the French Revolution, we have the three words that are the catchphrase of the revolution, right? Libertad, igualdad y fraternidad. Liberty, equality, and fraternity, correct? Yes? A similar catchphrase for the United States is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Because it's all about how people are free individually and they should do whatever makes them happy. And creating the United States is about giving them the opportunity to be happy. Now, does anyone know what the tres garantías are?
Era.
Eh,
Yo sí me la sabía.
Es lo que
Are
representa
they
la
libertad, igualdad y fraternidad?
No, era.
no. Era lo que representaban los tres colores, ¿no? Bueno,
Uh-huh.
en
What
parte
did they
de la bandera.
represent?
Unión, religión.
Uh-huh. Unión, religión e independencia. What? Right? Now, that's relevant because here we have no mention of freedom, no mention of equality, but we do have a mention of happiness, which means we are free to be constituted in a way that makes us happy. However, is there any mention of Mexicans choosing what makes them happy? No, right? It's all about keeping the rigid social structure that we had in colonial times, just keeping it in the new empire. Now, this leads us into las bases en el Plan de Iguala y el Tratado de Córdoba. Does anyone know what the Plan de Iguala and Tratado de Córdoba are?
Sí, no.
So the Plan de Iguala is the plan worked up by Agustín de Iturbide where he figured out that because of the Napoleonic Wars taking over Spain, it was rational for New Spain to be independent for a while, right? To manage its own affairs while Spain figured out their own stuff, right? And the Tratados de Córdoba were similar treaties, but in Spain, where Spain was like, okay, we can't really take care of our colonies right now, so let them do their own thing. And meanwhile, let's work things out here, right? So is there any mention here of Mexicans creating Mexico for any purpose other than keeping the colonial structure? No, right? Now, is this the type of country we have now? Is there a nobility? Is there a group of people where we know that group of people is in charge and we are 100% sure they are in charge and we can't do anything about it? Not really, right? I mean, there's people with a lot of money and we know they have more power than us, right? We know Carlos Slim has more power than Francisco Garcia. We know that. It's the truth, right? But the thing is, are we 100% sure that Carlos Slim has more power than Enrique Peña Nieto? Not really, right? We can maybe speculate about it. We can maybe make some rational guesses where we say, honestly, the president probably does whatever the big pockets tell him to do. But at the same time, maybe not, right? We can't be sure. So would we say that our current society is entirely conservative, tradition-driven, rigid social structure, religion in every area of our lives? Not really, right? Would we say we live in a liberal society with garantías individuales, a constitution, elections, equality? To an extent, right? Now, when did that come up? When did Mexico go liberal?
In the revolution.
The revolution.
Not really. The first liberal constitution was Benito Juárez, remember? Right? Las leyes de reforma, taking away power from the church. Yeah. So could we say that Mexico was invented with the la Guerra de Reforma? The liberal reformation that changed the rigid social structure into what we have now, or something similar to what we have now? What do you think?
Maybe it got us closer, but then Imperio arrived, right? The Imperio.
You're talking about the Second Empire?
Yeah, for Maximiliano. It was
No,
after that.
But the Second Empire was a liberal monarchy.
Yeah, so, well, it was, but supposedly it wasn't when they brought it here.
I mean, people that brought it here did not want a liberal monarchy, but when it arrived, it was a liberal monarchy. It had a constitution. Yeah. Well, they were working on a constitution. People had rights, etc.
Okay, we have that, but later on we had Porfirio Díaz.
That's the thing. Was Porfirio Díaz president of Mexico or president of somewhere else? Was the country he presided Mexico?
No.
Yes.
Yes, well, he loved France, but he was the president of Mexico.
Right? So the thing is, we can't really make a clear judgment here, mostly because the way we've been studying state building is a way that applies mostly to Europe and the United States, where it's kind of a natural progression where we talk about a community, people who identify with each other. They form a nation where they're like, we're a community, maybe we should also be a country. Then they form a state where they're like, if we're a country, we should probably have a government that reflects what we are, right? And after they have a state, they decide that maybe having a state is not enough, so that maybe they have to do things for the right reasons, and then you have a legitimate state, right? So when in France we talked about a nation that decides to go legitimate, right? So they have a French Revolution. In the United States, we have the entire process, a community that turns into a nation, that turns into a state that tries to go legitimate. Did that happen in Mexico?
No.
In that order?
No.
Super neat and ordered? Not really, right? That's why Mexico is a complicated country, and that is why we kind of need to first look at the European and North American perspectives to kind of figure it out. So let us make a survey. When do you think Mexico started existing? Can you see the survey? So diplomatic recognition, okay. So that means Mexico did not exist after the Declaration of Independence. The War of Reform, okay. So if the War of Reform is when Mexico started, that means Antonio López de Santa Anna was not president of Mexico. He was president of something else. Right? Okay. So the point of this discussion is Mexico a liberal country? Yes or no? Yes? Why? have to say why. You can't just be like, yep, super liberal. That's how it is. Have I ever told you because let's look at it this way. Liberalism means we recognize values like equality, liberty, individual perspective, etc. Right? Yeah? Is that part is clear? And we can kind of identify those in current Mexican society, right? We have a constitution that says we're all equal. We have that same constitution gives us very specific rights that existed before human rights existed, right? Is there any population that is specifically discriminated against in official Mexican laws?
No.
Not really. So we could say there are many liberal elements to Mexico. However, have I ever told you my Bolivia story?
No.
No? So my Bolivia story is, in 2015, I was in my maestría, and I had an intercambio in Uruguay. And the thing is, while I was in Uruguay, it was the summer here, but over there was the winter, so it was super cold, super boring, nothing to do except be at school, programming, because it was a statistics and programming thing. And I was really sad and because it was kind of like a wintry, depressing kind of thing. But my friend in Bolivia was like, Francisco, come to visit me. And I was like, I'm in South America, might as well visit, right? So I get to South America, I get to Bolivia. And the context here is I've always thought of myself as a very liberal, not racist person, right? I'm like, I've traveled, I studied social science, I'm not racist. Why would I be racist, right? If I was surrounded by people of a different race than me, I'd be fine. It's fine, right? I wouldn't care, right? So I get to Bolivia, and the first thing I notice is you are surrounded by people that are clearly indigenous. And I mean both racially, they are clearly indigenous, but also culturally, they are dressed differently, right? They are very clearly of a different culture. They speak they don't speak Spanish, they speak like Aymara or other indigenous languages, right? And although my previous instinct was like, I'll be fine if I run into this situation, I was not fine. I was like, there's a lot of indigenous people here. What's going on, right? And my friend Grecia from Bolivia, she was like, well, yeah, that's how society is, right? There are indigenous people here, a lot of them. And I was like, wow, but that's so weird. And she was like, why is it weird? They are people, they live in cities, right? What's the weird part? And I was like, but they must be so poor. And she was like, no, that is super racist. And I was like, that's not racist. Indigenous people are poor, right? If you here in Mexico, can you imagine someone that is indigenous and exactly as rich as Carlos Slim? It's very difficult for us to imagine it, right? And the thing is, in Bolivia, people who are indigenous are also empresarios, politicians, celebrities. They are extremely rich. You have las cholitas. Have you ever seen cholitas? No, let me show you. So cholitas are a specific ethnic group of women in Bolivia that dress in this very specific way with their like poofy skirts and their top and their bombines. And the thing is, those outfits are worth thousands of dollars. These women are super rich. There is a La Paz Fashion Week where these dresses and these accessories are paraded for these women to buy, and they are worth thousands of dollars. You can't even try to buy them if you're not one of them, right? So the thing is, that got me thinking, like, in the realm of possibilities, could there be a rich indigenous person in Mexico? Sure, it's possible, right? But why is it so difficult for me to see it realistically, right? And it's kind of a thing where, think of it this way. You as a group go to an intercampus in a prepa del Tec in Campus Monterrey, right? And you socialize with other tech students from prepa but in Monterrey. Would you feel more identified with the other tech students in Monterrey or with an indigenous community from Tlalpan?
Monterrey.
Which of the two groups would you be like, son como yo?
Monterrey.
The tech students.
Right? Which is weird because you are not from Monterrey, or most of you, right? doesn't really make sense. But at the same time, in Mexico, we have ingrained in our way of thinking that indigenous people are poorer than non-indigenous people, right? Why do we think this? Is this liberal? Is this equality? Is this what the Constitution says? Not at all, right? Not at all. Similarly, think of, I don't know, maybe you were too young, but remember the last presidential election?
Yes.
So do you remember what type of criticism was given to Josefina Vázquez Mota and to Enrique Peña Nieto? Kind of? Because if I don't know if you remember, but Enrique Peña Nieto was criticized for being too close to Televisa, for being too famous, maybe for being too young, but his capacity to be a politician was never really questioned, right? It was like, he's been a governor, he's been a deputy, he's fine, right? He could do the job. We're just kind of uncomfortable with him being so close to the media, but that's about it. Mostly he was the favorite one to win. But Josefina Vázquez Mota, what type of, did she receive the same criticism? What type of things were said about her?
Can I ask something?
Yes?
And why was people scared that Peña Nieto was so close to media?
Because he controlled what people knew about him.
Ah.
Yeah. Now, Josefina Vázquez Mota, on the other hand, was criticized for a lot of things that had nothing to do with her work, really. It was all about how maybe her husband didn't have a job, and that was weird. It was about how her daughters were too fat, and that is somehow relevant for a presidential election. It was about her diet. There was a lot of controversy about her not eating enough or eating too much, right? There was a lot of controversy about her gym routine, her exercise routine, things like that. So there was a double standard, really. And is that something you see in a liberal society? Is it two candidates being judged equally for the same job? Not really. So this leads us to the question, is there a very relevant conservative element to the way Mexico was built? Yes? Like what? Why? Why would you say that? Anyone? Anyone?
Can you repeat it, please?
Is there a very relevant conservative element to Mexico's state building? Ay, ¿de quién es ese perro? Dios mío, me asustó. Okay.
From where? Where are we talking about?
We're talking about Mexico's state building.
Yeah, but when?
No, in general, it's a process.
Because
So we already figured out that we can't really pinpoint a specific moment where Mexico was created. There wasn't one day where people woke up and were like, this is Mexico, right? But Mexico exists nowadays, so we know that kind of happened gradually. And we know there are liberal elements to what Mexico is right now, right? We know we stand for certain liberal ideas, which are the reason why the French Revolution and the American Revolution sound familiar to us, right? We're educated that way. We know those values. We know they are justified. We know they're necessary. However, is there a very important conservative element to the way Mexico was built? Are we somehow biased to think that social class determines our economic status, that maybe religion tells us what is good and necessary, that maybe men and women are not the same? Are we socialized that way? Are we educated that way? Yes, you have to say why. What?
I don't really understand your question. Like, you're telling us that if we have been biased about all the information about when Mexico was created, is that What are you asking us?
No, I'm asking if there is a very important conservative element to the way Mexico's nation and state were built.
Well, you're talking about gender inequality, right? That's what you said.
I'm using gender inequality as an example of the way our society is wired, kind of. Because think of it this way. Is it kind of automatic for the Mexican media and the Mexican society to see female candidates for the presidency as extremely different from male candidates? Is there a very automatic issue where we just have trouble imagining indigenous people with power of any kind? Right? Are you familiar with Marichui?
Yes,
presidential
the
candidate?
new.
Yeah, she's an indigenous presidential candidate from Chiapas, right? Well, she's a presidential candidate from Chiapas and she's also indigenous. And the issue is, how has the media treated her? Are they taking her just as seriously as they are taking Andrés Manuel López Obrador, for example?
No.
And he's from Tabasco. He's from the same region. Not really, right?
No, because we think that people that are like Marichui,
Yeah.
well, that she doesn't have power. Well, we think
Right.
that.
It's difficult for us to see indigenous people or women or black people or anyone who is not a white man in power of any kind, right? Could we imagine a Mexican billionaire who looked like Benito Juarez?
No.
Would be difficult. And the thing, what I'm asking about, maybe my question was not very clear because it's kind of abstract. It's not very concrete. But are these biases part of who we are as Mexicans, as Mexico? Because these are biases, son sesgos. Maybe they are not rational. Because that's the thing. We sometimes might confuse some cultural bias, which is something that we just think automatically because it's the way we were raised. It's what we saw around us as we grew up, with rationally thinking something. And maybe rationally we know that people having rights and equality makes sense, but maybe on another level we automatically just assume that darker people can't be powerful. We just assume that women belong in the home, and that's how it is, right? So I am not going to ask you which is more dominant. I'm not going to ask you if Mexico is more conservative or more liberal yet. But this is the discussion we need to have, right? We know the independence of Mexico was a super conservative movement, not liberal at all. We just saw the Declaration of Independence. We also know Mexico nowadays is pretty liberal, right? Our laws and our system are very much surrounded by liberal ideas, which we know kind of arrived around the middle of the 19th century with Benito Juarez. But how do those things coexist? Why are they both present in our lives and we don't question it? We're just like, oh, well, that's how it is. Because it doesn't really make sense, right? If we try to reconcile them rationally, we're like, can you have a constitution that says everyone is equal, but at the same time, people believing that not everyone is equal because indigenous people are always going to be poor?
Yes.
Clearly it's possible because we live in that type of society, but especially now that we are entering an election year, we need to question which values are conservative, which values are liberal, and which ones we actually stand next to, which ones we are actually supporting. Because the thing is, you guys are not going to vote in this election. You're too young. But in the next one, you're going to be there in the polls, same line as me, probably. Okie dokie. Any questions?
Yes.
Tell me.
So I didn't get very clear about when did Mexico start existing?
That was the point. We don't have a clear answer. It was a slow process in most of the 19th century.
Okay.
Francisco,
Yes?
the Imperio started, the Imperio with Maximiliano. It started because France didn't recognize Mexico as a country. That's what I understood, what I knew. So we didn't have the full the recognition of other countries.
No, at that point, Mexico did have diplomatic recognition. The issue was that France had a problem with Mexico not paying its debts to France.
And also the United States, right?
So a lot of countries had that issue with Mexico. We'll talk about that next week, actually. But with France, they were very pragmatic about it, and they were like, the only way to make sure that Mexico pays is to literally control Mexico.
Yeah, but then following the logic you were talking about needing recognition from other countries to be a country, then we didn't exist as a country until
That's the
later.
thing. Mexico did
After all
exist.
the interventions.
Yeah, that's the
of
thing.
other
Mexico
countries.
did exist. Was it legitimate? Well, being intervened by so many countries, that's another question. Because who was making the decisions? Literally not Mexico.
So a country needs recognition to start existing.
Yes.
Like a country can stop existing if other countries stop recognizing them
Yes.
as one.
Yeah, that happens a lot when countries unify or reunify. So think about that. We'll talk about it next week. Now, just to finish up, in your weekly questionnaire, you have to do an OPCVL, and then you have to answer the question: was the independence of Mexico more influenced by liberalism or conservatism? What do you think?
I think a doubt there.
Yes?
Like, if we chose the one that is the process of proclamation, the process of the independence, is a conclusion that Virginia wrote.
Who's Virginia?
You post it on your
Ah,
blog.
okay. I don't understand why you say the first name. 1 second. So it's the one from Friday, right?
Yep.
Virginia Guedea.
Yes.
What's your question? I don't understand.
Like there is not something specific about what if Mexico was liberalist or conservative. Well, the independence, it wasn't liberalist or conservative. So we can. How can we answer the question if there is no information? Well,
You need to decide, because you do have information and we already discussed it.
Like,
now you need to decide and justify. Think of it this way: does the Declaration of Independence have anything liberal about it? Is there anything liberal in the sources we have about the independence of Mexico?
well, being independent from Spain, something liberal. No,
That's not necessarily liberal, right? France was independent of Germany, and that didn't make it more liberal. They were just independent. They did whatever they wanted. De facto states are independent. Doesn't make them liberal.
So it will be more conservative.
Why do you think so?
Because even though they say they wanted to be independent, they wanted to have the same control.
The same social structure, the same monarchy type of government, the same Catholic influence. All of that is conservative.
Yeah.
Right?
But the question is, like, how can I explain it? ¿Puedo decirlo en español? Como ya está contando que tú ya sabes esa información, o es nada más, o es responder la pregunta de acuerdo a lo que leíste.
No entiendo la pregunta. O sea, estás preguntando si es con todo lo que sabes o si puedes fingir que no sabes, o cómo.
O sea, creo que a lo que se refiere Elisa es que si respondemos con base en lo que nosotros ya sabemos o con base en lo que dice la source.
Todo. O sea, el OPCVL es respecto a una fuente, ¿no? Eso sí es de la fuente nada más. Pero la pregunta es de responder la pregunta, o sea, es responderla. Sí. No tienes que fingir que no sabes nada para responderla.
Francisco, es sobre nuestro video.
Ay, espérate, estoy en clase.
Ah, shit, perdón.
Ay, Dios. ¿Alguien más?
Yo sí tengo una pregunta, Francisco.
Tell
Lo que
me.
decías de que éramos conservadores desde siempre. ¿Te la pregunto en inglés o en español?
However.
Bueno, entonces no podemos ni siquiera decir que la independencia empezó como algo liberal, o por lo menos así se lo vendían a los indígenas, por
Well,
ejemplo.
the thing is, if you want to say that the independence of Mexico was liberal, you have to give evidence.
Pero que empezó. Más bien terminó conservadora, pero empezó liberal. O más bien conservadora
Yo
disfrazada
diría
de
lo
liberal.
opuesto.
No,
No,
the
yo
thing,
pienso que empezó disfrazada.
I'm not asking how the independence of Mexico started. I'm asking, was the independence of Mexico more influenced by liberalism or conservatism?
Pero la independencia sería todo el proceso, no solo la culminación.
Yeah, but if you just say it started out liberal, that's not the answer. Right? I need an answer that actually answers the question.
Tiene que ser o liberal o conservadora.
Yeah, and it's about the entire process. So and the thing is, you can't say, well, both, because you have to choose one. I'm asking which one influenced it more. Yeah? Now, if it's more, it doesn't mean that the other one was irrelevant. Maybe there were liberal ideas somewhere around there, but if that's your answer, you need to say which ones and where.
Okay.
Yeah? Okie dokie. So we are out of time, but if you have any questions, let me know.
Yo.
Yes?
Es una última pregunta. No podemos escribir más de los de las 4 líneas, ¿verdad?
Son 5.
¿Ah, son 5?
Mhm.
¿En serio son? Ok.
Ok. Bueno.
Okie dokie. See you on Monday. Take care. Bye.